Hey, I'm live. I'm going to open up and adore the Lord with you. Let's turn to Song of Solomon 5 and just tell him who he is from there. That is in the Old Testament. It's right after Ecclesiastes. That's awesome. Okay. Well, light's bright. So, Lord Jesus, we come to you. We say we slept in verse 2, but our heart was awake because you were knocking. You're knocking on our door of our heart. You're telling us to enter into the deepest place with you, the most wonderful place with you, the most consuming place with you, where you're all in all. You have first place in creation. It says in Psalms that all the trees will clap their hands to you. The rocks will cry out to you. The winds blow in love for you through the trees. The sun comes up and it sets to the glory of God. This is the sunlit fields. But the fields and the lilies and the valley and the rose of Sharon, they all adore you. Every creation groans for you. All of politics will bow its knee. It says you are the wonderful counselor, the Prince of Peace, the King of Kings, that all the governments of the earth will submit to you, the Prince of Peace. That there is this working of this extraordinary wisdom of you. It says the wisdom of all the ages, the secret, the mystery of all the ages in Colossians is that you will be all in all. There's never been any doubt, ever been any question. And there's never been any doubt, any question that you do good for us in our past, you do good for us in our present, and you do good for us in our future, that you said, oh, magnify me, and your face will be radiant, Psalms 37. There'll be no shame in you, and you will inherit the land. God, we see the memorial stones in our lives. We see the times you were there and we didn't even see you. We see all the times you pursued us and you loved us the thousands and millions of times. And we just glorify you and we agree with that covenant as we come together. God, this resounding new view that will change and transform us tonight. God, that Psalms 92, 1 and 2 covenant that you had me make as soon as I came into a relationship with you. You showed me how you had been there and I hadn't seen it, how much of my original design you had brought forth so many times and I had many fight for it. The glimpses of the goodness of who you are in me, in my life and in the world. It was astounding and I had missed it. Seeing according to the earth and the gaze that sees according to base nature. Oh, God, you said, proclaim your love in the morning and then your faithfulness to that love by night, that every day is a day you love us. Every day is meaningful. Every day is substantial. Every day is a gift. Whether perplexing or challenging, you're so far high above it. When Stephen was stoned, he said, I get to do this to the glory of God. Right? This is a great day because he had you and he lived from another place. So God, we give ourselves tonight for you to open our eyes, and you are the God that we can see, that we see your eyes together tonight. We see your mind, we see your thoughts, we see your feelings, that we just don't share those principles, but we share life and life abundantly and eternally in you, that you overflow and you consume us together and we go into visitations of you consistently. This is to be a time of encounter with you and one another, where we go to that Hebrews 12:23, the mountain where we already have ascended, and we see those glorious places, your radiant cities, men's spirits made just. We see the angelic hosts that surround us. We see from the goodness of the place of you and the way you see the earth according to its original design and its redemptive nature. And no man or devil or past hypocrite or despot, no one can define your earth. You're the definer. Oh, and you see the ways of redemption. You see the ways of your goodness. Oh, Lord, we just say, open our eyes and our hearts in a special way. Launch us in this 2021 for this to be a new day in every way. In Jesus' name, amen. Oh, love you guys. I can see you. And some of you, I'm so glad you're here. So it's jump in time. So let me share. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to share, and then I'm going to act like I go to sleep. Then new day, and I'm going to share a second part, and then we'll divide it up. I'm going to get somebody who knows how to edit and stop it and do part two, because we have 3 parts tonight. So the first part is pretty brief. Second part is pretty brief. Third part, a little more time. And the fourth part is prophetic words for individuals. So that will be sewn in as we go, but actually there'll be a time that we really need to just focus our time on who that I saw along this journey. So let me say, the title of this is Prophetic Times We Are In. That's all I can see. I wrote it a while ago. But Angie Kelly, I'm seeing you're here. We miss you. We have Monday administrative meeting. We need to be together. We're getting our stuff together. So that's what I'm going to share within our State of Union. So it's our State of Union, and then it's we need you or you need us. That's the options. So I want to say stage 1 we're in is, I love to call us just a hope family, a hope team, is coming together as a hope team. And you have relationships in the body of Christ, and there's different types of friends. There's comfort friends. There's friends that are hang out with you friends. There's friends that are build with you friends. Then there's friends that are pray with you friends. So I found, I believe it's 17 types of friends in the scripture. And so this is a profound understanding. We discount often a friendship because, like when I went through wounds and people would say, you find out who your real friends are. Well, no, I found out friends that knew how to relate to me in my pain. And that is a special place. But it didn't discount the others that weren't supposed to walk with me in that place. It was just, they were different types of friends. And so sometimes we want one person to be all things in all ways. And the grace level is just, they can't be that. And it happens so often in marriages where you just understand that person's grace level and the intimacy and what he's given you, and you don't look at what it's not. You look at what God has given you in that relationship. So what has God given us? God is giving us a hope team that has the Proverbs 17:17 at its core. It says, a friend is a friend at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. And it speaks of 3 things as we go through the house, yellow house, that you advance together in adversity. You're able to keep your spirits towards the promises and towards the hopes. You don't want pit walking friends. And that's friends that identify with the misery versus the hope. You don't want commiserate friends, because then you just dig the ditch deeper. It's like in business. I'd meet with business people for lunch, and it was like whose crater was bigger, who lost more money, who got more taxes from the government, versus look what we get to do for the world by creating this good or this product. So one is we're friends that keep the hope alive for each other. That doesn't mean we avoid dealing with what pain has happened, but with the solution, a sorrow with a hope. That's profound. Commiserate friends, which I wanted for a while. I just wanted to whine. That isn't the best. Friends will listen, nod, love, and then just speak of a higher place. So we want marvelous comrades that are hope friends. And so we don't want the pit walking together. Second, we want friends that are for us, that it doesn't mean they see us as perfect, but it's not Noah and Ham, where Noah was a leader of all the leaders, had been a righteous man, got drunk one night, and his son Ham was surprised and told everybody. And often when people get close to somebody in leadership or they become a leader or something, there's an automatic higher standard, which is right. But there was a reason why kings had cupbearers, because they had understanding that the pressures each other were under, and they weren't going to run out until it says, don't come against God's anointed one another. The mistakes someone had made that are the challenges in their life, but be like the other son, Seth, who walked him backwards, covered him with a blanket, and just cared for his father's heart to help his father be nurtured into his real place of honor, his real place of original design. So that second distinction is that this is a time that a hope team is forming. Now, I've been walking in the Lord and have people that I trust and I love, and had the same board of 35 for about 18 years. And then it shifted, and there's a way to know when a season changes in relationships. And there's a redefining of the relationships. And in America, and I haven't been great at that, but I really make an attempt to say, because of my health and my ability to do the things I was doing, I had to shift, and I had to just walk in a private place and refocus, and then just pick up with the ones that I was to pick up with on that level, because many of my friends became grandparents and other things that really took their world, and we still are close, but the ability to build together, it wasn't that time. And so there has to be those that you build with that you can understand shifts in the seasons, and you become very good at respecting the grace of God moving in somebody's life to move them somewhere else. That's the next step for them. In the book of Acts, they came together in book Acts 1:8, and then they didn't know how to go their separate ways, the apostles, so they got persecuted in Acts 8:1, that sent them out to different places. So the second thing about relationship is always being loyal, but letting the expression of a relationship form and grow. So if you had your kids all at home, and an organization a lot of times is like raising kids. Like I had a leadership team when I was 23, and about 25, they all went their different ways. And I thought I'd been a lousy leader, and Bob Jones said, "You graduated them. You taught them the 3 lessons, and they would go on to somebody else's class." And I thought, wow, because I felt like they didn't like me, that thing. And so just building a hope team is what's covenant relationships look like in these times. Well, one is we don't be commiserate friends. We'd be marvelous comrades. And if, Michael, you're taking notes, these are the main points that I want to have anybody as a review, and we'll list it in our social media so people can see the journey we're going on. And we will have visuals for those journeys. And so we're looking at entering into this yellow house. Well, who do we enter in with? It's our hope friends, marvelous comrades. So that's one. Marvelous comrades versus commiserate friends that help you to take the next step versus draw back and just lick wounds. And two, they always believe in you, that they have a love that hopes all things for you. And if they see that you make a mistake, they don't cry it from the rooftops. They nurture you and find the pain source and believe in you. And they sing the song in your heart when you forget to, because spiritual memories will get weak and they'll remind you of your memorial stones. And then third, they're able to shift with the relationship, and it doesn't have to make each other something wrong with each other. You see that all the time where people are moving from churches or that. We are in this to lift, love, and launch one another. And so State of the Union is a hope team is getting settled. At first, it was because of me. There was just too much to in order or curriculum things that were to help the world with. And that's the Yellow House Journey, which is a royal journey for reformers. And it's beautiful. It's building blocks for anybody's life. And spiritually, in this season from 2000 to 3000, then it's a 100-year plan, then 2000 to 2100, I'm sorry. And then second, this one this is adoration pillars being drawn together. Those who live for the knowledge of God and just want to be presence carriers, want to know him and know his heart. And it doesn't mean others that have a focus are good people, but we're going to live and live more abundantly in the knowledge of him, that we see everything comes from him, through him, and it's all about knowing this person, Jesus Christ. So second is we've developed through the years, by the grace of God, a real understanding of a new encounter pathway to go from hearing him with the hearing of the ear to seeing him, and seeing him in not just the corner of the church, but in all of life. Not just to have a land phone to see him in one devotion time, but to have a cell phone where we see and can get in touch with him. But it can be staticky, so then there's a walkie-talkie. Cell phone is like him from the heavens speaking to us, but a walkie-talkie is all you hear is you and him. And that's the place of adoration where you know that you know him. And you know his different faces. Like Moses said, his form, I know his form, his essence, I see it, I smell it, I taste it. And then it's where you have this dialogue with him that's constant communion. And so we've just mined out what Bob Jones said was buried for 6,000 years, this way of encounter with him, and then the modeling of it, and then us becoming these heavenly citizens that we're to be in this hour, or the things under the clouds will get weighty, and we have to live there, like John 3:12, we're in the heavens, but our feet are on the ground. And that's real, with the angelic host around us. And it's a heavenly ascent. It's a place where Bob Jones said, let's be raptured 7 times a day and then more. And we would go, and our places of our prophetic got higher and higher because we were seeing from the 50 million mile view. And so it was not incomplete prophecy where it's seeing the problems and the battles without a full solution. That's incomplete prophecy. So we are to equip and train the adoration pillars that are planted all over the earth. And when they give their praise and adoration, they're like Mary, the aroma's everywhere. They're like in Zechariah, that 10 people grab your garment and you'll be able to put their hand into his hand. They'll say, who is this? We can love him also, like the Song of Solomon women did. So we are earnestly and fully going after the knowledge of him and visions of Jesus every night, every day. It's finding Waldo. We can see him. So the State of the Union that was very well laid out with visuals that were beautiful, and the language and the steps and what happened was we had our house burned down in Reading. It was a beautiful big B&B, and 2 doors down we had another one, and they both burned in the car fire. And a lot of our empirical data or intellectual, God and intellectual data was burned up. So we had this little zip drive that was not organized, but it has a lot of it on there. So we've been in the process of just coming into a new understanding, depth of what the Lord has in that journey, but also putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And so we've invited people in to help us look through and search for this, the recreation room, the rec room, the table of the Lord room. And so what we offer right now is we offer devotions that people are doing it according to a pattern, but it's rich. And you get to acknowledge God, then appropriate him in your life and see how he was appropriated in that face of God in that season. And then you applaud his face in others. That's where the prophetic comes. You see, wow, you're the comforting God like this month, and you've been the comforting God through Nanette, been the comforting God through Rachel, through Doreen, so through Roger the Joiner, and I don't know who's on tonight, but the next thing that we're doing as we go into this place, becoming those reformers that aren't shook by what's going on in the earth. We shake the earth with our hope and our confidence in him. Is he brought forth hope hearing, and that's awesome. And just there's an equipping to be done in a new type of prophetic. I was visited by a CENTCOM, a Central Commander, during the Iraqi War, and I thought he was going to talk about the Iraqi War, and he talked to me about the war over the nature of God, and it was the greatest war in our planet, and the war over hearing and the hope hearing. What's the nature of how he speaks, and what's he talking about? What's solutions, and how could we progress in the way we heard, that we had been hearing in a way to tear down, and now he was going to show us a way to hear to build up. And I have something to say part 2 about our hearing. And then he showed this hope lifestyle. This has been the most dramatic. It's a hope, we call it, and God did a hope reformation. And he took me in Norway. I'd been speaking to their leadership about God's hope lifestyle, and there was some negative response, not from everybody, but they thought, this life's misery, and that you die and you sacrifice, and and I was afraid of sacrifice, and lived as rough as anybody. Everybody's had a tough life, but there's a way to view it. And I just had the Lord speak out loud, show up at the end of my bed, say, I hate this misery Christianity. It's not just about a baby being born, but it's a life well lived and entering the joy of the Master. In Matthew 10:30, I got 100 times more for you in this life. And it just said Darby was wrong, who kind of the father of this eschatology that's so negative and oppressive. And he said, Matthew 24 had been interpreted wrongly, and a number of things that now I've had theologians really study this understanding of how much he died for us to live a life that is walking in the sunlit fields with the promises and the inheritance. So if you haven't gotten the Hope DVDs, I encourage you to do that. I haven't thought about the hope lifestyle and really thought about the sin of hopelessness and doubt. It really will set you free to live a full life with a future and a hope. And you get a hope that sees a long ways out. So when you're challenged, you got that you've seen. So these are the main building blocks. It's deep. So as we go through the yellow house, we'll enter into the I love you room, where he just every few rooms, he would insert this room through the yellow house. Because if you go through the love and forgiveness room, and then after that, the joy room, the BU room, they're beautiful. And you're encountering him in each corner, and he's taking you with brothers and sisters in the past. It's just awesome. And he's giving you new tools. Well, he might then take you to the mixing board room or the attunement room and show you where you haven't attuned well to others. And you always can go into the I love you room. He said at any time that when you're, like Isaiah 28 says your heart's like a ginger, or it's like wheat, or it's like grain. And it says with grain, you crush it. But it also says if you plow the ground too much, it gets hard. If it's always just, tough versus you stop and you let the Lord oil your feet and tell you how much he loves you. You might have to go to the I love you room, every room, every other room. It's okay. But the I love you room, that's when he opens up this new encounter pathway with him, and he just dances you into a journey. And that's where we'll share with you that journey, and then how to enter into experience in the 3 chambers, 12 new faces of God, or forgotten faces of God. It's just, you'll pass out. You'll be intoxicated with his love, but you also have another way to pray and communicate with him. And also, when we go into the hope room, and then the hope hearing room, and the hope reformation room, you'll start to hear in a way that you'll know that you heard his voice. And you'll know that the words don't drop to the ground. You'll know that you have perceived divine communications, and it's not just to bless, but to build. And for 50 years, 100 years, and it's not a gush and guess. And that's what we want to go into as well. So the State of the Union is that we on these Friday or Saturday nights will have Hope Church. And it will just not be me talking, but I'm going to lay a foundation. And right now we're in the comfort room. In the comfort room, again, we had pictorials. We had a book almost ready that had 12 chapters, one for each room. And it was like chicken soup for the soul or butter, nighttime. It was just, some people that are pretty critical of books said this is like Pilgrim's Progress, or they just said, wow, just the language and the encounter with the Lord. In fact, I shared it like in 1985 with the men that ended up writing or had written, I don't know, the shack. And they took 3 scenes from the Yellow House. And I told them, that's okay, take it, like the garden scene, a couple of others. that were from this journey, and they just listened to me share about going through this house. And it was play therapy, and it was healing and wholeness. And I saw many of you there, and it was just wondrous where it began and where it took us to. And every step along the way was its own prize. And it wasn't a spanking, it was an upgrade. It was play therapy, like I said. So it was neat just to see those three parts acted out in the shack. But I have a responsibility. And the other thing that we're doing is we bought and built 5 B&Bs that are Yellow House B&Bs. One's the Joy House, one's Wisdom House. They're places you can go and experience the journey. And we're at phase 1. It's been just, there's going to be an invite to people to help in particular ways. And also, we've just been, people have been gracious to give, and it's continuing so that we could, workman's worth their wages. If somebody's good at graphic arts and help us with this book, or help us rewrite some of the chapters where we got great language, but I'm not a finished carpenter. There'd be an editor, that's something that we pay, or somebody that is great with distribution. I have many of my distribution channels, and that's been painful because people think I don't love them, but I just don't have the addresses anymore. But there'd be a way to recoup that. And it's just a matter of going from a real large ministry to, the Lord kept saying, you got an old operating system. You were pushing a cart up the hill and it took off down the hill, and I got known for prophecy. And that just wore me out, because it's not, prophecy was always hearing his heart to lead to something that's being built long term and knowing him. And so, I'm cautious with even how I do the prophetic, because it got very sensational, and I want it to be a lift in life, but it's unto building something together. I tell people their numbers or their phone numbers or their addresses and their grandchildren or their grandmother, or things that would be meaningful to them, but they already knew who they were. I loved it when God would tell me who they are, where they're going, how to get there, and always they can evaluate it. So this time is really to do that. This time is to, one, I just want to finish with the clarity that each month we'll be going through a room, and the next room we go through is the Hope Reformers room. And it's awesome. Awesome. Just the uniqueness of people and their God-given creativity and calls, how that was unfolded, and what they looked like, who they were. The 3 men from the Library of Alexandria. I just dreamed of a man last night, J.R.M., the British politician, and he was an example of what they should be. And I believe a lot of times I dream of them and then I meet them. And so I believe in this one. I already got a call today from that sharing last night about this one. And so it's just God's plucking the reformers out. Those, like the Steve Jobs of the past, he was in the Hope Reformers room, didn't say he was saved, but people were brilliant believers that were kind to him. And he said, he was throwing fits at first, but he said, if I would have known this, I would have been more kind. In fact, I would have been a friend to you guys. I would have been. And so I believe that we're going to be able to relate and be able to walk out creative genius with some unique ones in the days to come. So that's the next room. So we'll be going through a room, but we'll also be going through this knowledge of God, that every room and corner reveals Jesus in a fuller way. And, you might often say, wow, I didn't seem that way, or he might have even more to bring out. And it just will deepen our love as we communicate for the person of Jesus. And then it will be something that gets cemented in us about the comfort of God, because we won't be able to endure the rejection unless we have the corresponding level of his comfort. And his comfort brings peace to who you are with him. And it brings peace, which I'll speak of tonight, to your past, present, and future. Comfort. And that you have to be able to go on. If you get trapped like Naomi did, and my life's been rough, now I'm just soiled and weighted down, bitter. Bitter really meant just sour towards life. It's not just angry towards a person. Then you lose your momentum. And so the comfort of God comes in and heals that completely, so you can be robust in your moving forward in the future. So that each room has its focus, and also there's a word of the Lord for each person. He doesn't want to give a garden for all and miss the flower for one. We have a subscription where we're adoring God and praying and asking certain questions about people that have signed up for the subscription. We ask for a donation because there's just a lot of commitment. I wrote a book called The Discovery Process with some other people about finding people's essence. And the team has gotten together and they're doing great. The organization we need a little help with. But it really is progressing. We're all asking these questions about this person and about their part in this room, and the questions about who they are, where they're going, where they're at. And then we send them the notes and the sound file that gives them the next step and leads them to a tool that will help them. And it's the best thing that I've ever experienced, where we really build people step by step. Now, I'm not satisfied with it right now. I think we're doing a good job with our people, but I feel like since it wasn't organized, we'd paid a software company and they were going to organize it, paid them a lot of money, and it dropped to the ground, and we didn't even realize that people weren't getting communicated with. And so that will clean up. But I just want to give you a State of the Union and just do share with you that we'll post the 12 rooms so you can kind of see where we're going. You can't see my wall, or I've got a diagram of the Yellow House floor plan. It's right there in the corner. Where am I at? Over there. But it's all stretched across the wall. And I want you to just pray about making an agreement to be with us a year. And you just, it's, if you constantly go from here to there and you pull the roots out of a potted plant because something just didn't seem like it fit, then it's like a newly potted plant that'll go into shock and die. And so I just a wrestler, and I went in knowing that I might not like the sport, but I wasn't gonna even ask the question whether I liked it or not until I was a year into it. And I wasn't going to build up resentments or react. And the reaction is an enemy. And so revelation is why we want to be led. And so I know that I'll see sometimes the people afterwards, I can see everybody's name that was on the call. If everybody signs in, somehow makes a comment, I really encourage you to do that. And then I get back and I start to pray for the people. On this StreamYard I'm on, I can see 2-3 people at a time, and then it goes out of sight. So, just love you and want to just encourage you. And I'd ask for your prayers and ask about yourself, that we need a divine historian. That next, what will happen is we're going to share our string of pearls. What that will be is our prophetic history. And it is really so rich. And I've done it with the major movements across our nation and other nations that And just like the Revival Alliance, I said, you're going to be the Reformation Association. And they said, just tell us your story. And they all were together, these 10 couples. And I just, for 3 days, told them the stories. And they wanted more, and just the foundation prophetically and out of the word and where it had come from and building blocks and where it was leading to. And with John Arnott and his international and national leaders, with Mark Sharona and his leaders and international leaders, and I could go on. I just don't want to, with businesses. So the divine historian, somebody that would walk with me, and we would just share the memorial stones, and it's just full of richness and encounter and stunning and understanding. And it takes, it'd be like 20 tapes maybe, and it'd be an hour a piece. And then second, just we need to have this Yellow House story written and visualized so people can go on this supernatural journey of journeys. And I can tell you why it is, and why everybody I've met can relate. And we're going to have 12 yellow houses in different nations, other nations, and there'll be places that people have a bucket list and go to. I've had somebody offer in LA a couple $1 million just to build out a whole one, because there's ways. It's like somebody was making it into a video game where you go through the rooms, but that's what it'll be like in there, where you're experiencing in each room, just that reality of God. And so we need writers. There's corporate prophetic to come out every month, and that's from what I share here, but more exacting. Sometimes I'm not able to share here, more fully the details, and so just ask you to pray, or if you know people. And again, those are things that I want to. Workman's worth their wages, and a good editor, good broadcast director. That I had my son, I'd be slipping in and out of bed. He'd help with the script. He'd help keep his dad on the content, not too long, but I'm just giving you kind of a state of the union. Adoration. Those that just walk with us, and they learn this skill, and they learn how to teach others. And we had a Harvard young lady that profound, wrote out our curriculum for we had written it out. It was rough, but beautiful, just to make it really builder friendly. And the Hope Hearing prophetic team, I want to have a string of Heroes team. I wasn't healthy enough to really be consistent with these teams, that we just hear God together, and it's like string of pearls. We share it. And generally, I have something that I scouted out, and it'll be clear. And then we meet and we talk about it. A PA, a personal assistant, just relationships, and those things are really significant, and administrative help, so that we, I'm talked about being an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is good at intergalactic vision, and then polishing the doorknob with no steps in between. And then my management grace isn't there. I just got to be a scout and get out there and see what's up over the hill and come back. But anyway, Jesus present. And communication and presentation, love is to do good and communicate. So you do graphics and do artwork, and you do it beautifully, and you do music. There's a number of songs that I've written with others, Brian and Jan Johnson, and different ones that, they have the songs. Orphan Kings did with Audio Adrenaline, or King and Country, that just are themes for us. So just want to invite you in, but be weekly on the Hope Church time, and we're going to go to the highest levels of the Word and other universities and galaxies, other universes and galaxies. And we're the IGM team, Intergalactic Management Team. But honestly, I wouldn't say that everybody has to believe in what God's called them to. And just Bob Jones and the dreams, going to this Institute of Higher Learning. And there was an angel with this book that hadn't been opened for 6,000 years. And it was called the Book of Hope. And gave it to me. And the next night, Bob Jones called me out. And that's what you'll hear in the history. And then you'll say, wow, gosh, that'll either really engage you, or it will say, or engage you double. Either you love it or you love it more, or you'll say, yeah, wow, how do I move out there? I can't sit, just be around and go, we'll just say, glory to God. And I'm just so thankful for those ones that have just jumped in where things were unclear, and I'm just getting my health and feet under me. Just thank you so much for being patient. So that's our State of the Union. Okay. So any questions, anything like that, just write them in here. And, Jacqueline helps answer. Valerie does some, and Sonia, and just love Cody's starting to help just to communicate to people when they communicate this way, so I don't miss it. On Messenger, I miss it often, but, we'll get to it. So just be patient if you can. And I know there's a way. I think we post our webpage address, and if you ask questions there, that helps. So love you guys. That's part 1. So let's act like we're going to sleep. And part 2, but I just want to go back to part 1 and say, I just want all of you. I just want all of you. I just love you. And I just see you, and I see the callings, Simeon's to be a Simeon, to see the Lord coming in the sight of a baby. And then our babies that are coming. And there's a lot more to it. And I just so want to see people find their place, be plucked out of, any kind of misery, released into this dance of hope and celebration of who they are and their giftings, and then placed in their God-ordained calling. And I just see a place with us together. There's ones that I haven't talked to a lot or gotten to know as well, but I do, and we'll have times where it'll just be times of just speaking to your hearts. Bob Jones, somebody walk in and he'd start to talk, or Mike Bickle. I had a parking lot crew. They'd wear like this orange that Jacqueline gave me, and I hit them with orange Cossack hats, and they're all ex-pro football players. I don't know where my hat is. It's close, but that Jacqueline made. It's awesome. But they would, help us. We had too many people parking on top of each other. So these football players, a lot of them still were pro football players. I was leading a fellowship of Christian athletes in our city. And Mike would pull in Bickle, and he was the lead pastor, and he'd say, that guy over there has got the best heart, and the way he loves his wife and children. And he'd say things, and I'd say, how do you know him? And he said, no, I just watched him. I thought, man, just when you watch with the eyes of love, you discern. So, and you discern for good. So, close our eyes, fall asleep. Part 2. You ready, everybody? Little break. Part 2. So what time is this? Jacqueline, if you wouldn't mind writing down the time. Jacqueline, I see your name on there. Just so that we can say part 2. And part 2 is the word of the Lord is good. Na, 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 to those who, no, I don't want to say that. How do I want to say this? Beware of the policemen in the body of Christ. Beware of the disappointed ones. Beware of the young, zealous ones. Beware of those that, I don't want to know if I want to say beware. Say, just be patient with those that criticize the prophets. And I don't know where you stand, but it's time that I spoke to this. And there were a number of people that said Donald Trump would be in office by January 20th. And then I will only give a certain amount of bandwidth to social media or even what people are speaking out there. You got to know when to tune in and tune out. And just, there's so much the Lord can tell us in heavenly ways, but there are prophetic voices that I really respect and appreciate. And anybody that steps out to prophesy, like, they said, wish that all would prophesy. Paul said, wish that all would reach out. And Moses, they're prophesying. Well, that's good. Jesus, they're prophesying. That's good. Let them do it. Just those that reach to hear for his voice, which we're all called to. It's the number one commandment. Listen, O Israel. We say it's to love the Lord thy God, Deuteronomy 6:5. But number one, the expression of love is to listen to someone's heart. And that's the greatest act of love as a father. When my children would listen to my heart, I'd cry now. I just don't want to go there, but, my son, I'll just say this, I lived in Zimbabwe. A lot of people were killed there. And they were accident. It was tragic. It was painful. So my son heard me. He was too little, and we didn't tell him about it much. It was before he was born. My wife and I was there. So he heard me, 7, saying to somebody who asked me about it. I just said, it's going great, I mean, or not going great, but it's fine, Well, that night my son sits down and on the bed, and I just would read books, and he's just cuddly like a puppy, and said, Dad, tell me about Zimbabwe. And I said, well, son, it was a beautiful area, and it was. And I started going with that, and he said, no, Dad, tell me about Zimbabwe. And I said, well, Dad, Jed, there are a lot of friends there, and they're just wonderful people. And he said, Dad, tell me about Zimbabwe. And I put my head on my 7-year-old's chest and started crying. He comforted me, and I said, son, they all died. And just to have your son care to listen to your heart that way. And so, number one, I dreamed about people that were annihilating prophetic voices. And they were saying a few things. One, they said, they're trying to be super saints. They want to be somebody. And I hope everybody wants to be somebody. And what would you care anyhow? And just, they ought to be somebody. And Paul hoped that all prophesy, and hopefully if they are immature and they want to be known for being able to hear God, once they're doing it for a little while and they get the kickback and those things, it's not, that's, the fame wears off pretty quick, and you've got to be doing it because you love him. Maybe you can't, I don't know, but I just think it's like when people spoke in tongues and other people didn't. They said they think they got some special gift. They're haughty. They're different. It's just been that way all the time. And I just would want to say, I would not give a second to people that are criticizing prophetic people that have a heart for God and that are speaking out prophetically. To me, I'd love for them to listen to his heart and it says, if any man speaks or woman, let them speak as an oracle of God. So the point is, we should be speaking if we don't think it's God's thoughts and God's feelings through us. It's like Jesus said to Peter, get behind me, Satan. 1 second he said, you're the voice of God. Second he said, no, you're Satan's voice. And we've got to understand that every word that proceeds out of our mouth should be an oracle word from the voice of God. It should be blended with his supernatural insight, his heart, because we're sons and daughters of him. So it's really ignorant, lacking knowledge to think, no, we're all going to be judged anyhow for the words that come out of our mouth. And when I mean judged, it's judged for reward. It's if we did it sincerely and we spoke it. When I'll get convicted is when I'm tear people down as much as I lift them up because I've gotten hurt. You know, if I'm reaching for him and I'm confident in the ways that I've known to hear him, and I have a track record in that, then again, there's a difference between a personal prophecy of encouragement and a directional prophecy. To tell somebody they're going to get married to this person or to tell them they're going to get this job by this date is something you've got to think about. And this is where I heard in the spirit, these people around the table and said, there's no redos or there's no retakes. And you miss it once. 1 John, it says you're not of God. Now, it's not the whole counsel of it. You know, Bob Jones used to say it's 33%. Because we see in part in the New Testament. And then we get others together and we test the word with one another. Then we speak the word. And we have a responsibility to do that. And then the word gets sharpened. Iron sharpens iron because there's timing, there's placement. I mean, you're having dreams, usually, or symbolic language come to you, and your application can come with that fullness of an impression. That's the internal voice of the Lord that says, this is what I spoke in that. So it's like Daniel, you know, Minamina, he saw it. He got that internal voice that spoke it to him. So I had a dream about one in Pennsylvania, and I don't want to say it, but it's in Pittsburgh, and saying many false prophets are around. And then there was a number of others that had concluded. And I've had international leaders and leaders of different movements that they're already cynical. And so it just, you know, they asked me about what they thought were my friends, and some were, and what they had said. And I didn't even know everything they said. And then about the ones that had apologized. And I just knew and could speak for what I had heard, and I'd run past others that I had in 2000 heard for the next 5 presidents, and up to the God of the Trump card was the 4th one in 2016. It had been right, and then sometimes it's not about the accuracy of the word. The Lord will let you hang out there. It's about the love you give it with. But I have had 3 times where I was confident, but I always know that some prophecies are conditional. Like the prophecy when God spoke very specifically and directly, Isaiah, go tell Hezekiah, pack his bags, make his household, get it together, he's going to go, die. Directional. Hezekiah appeals for 15 more years, gets it. So God changes his mind. And I knew about this presidential election that he spoke, and he said, Ask me again January 20th, and just be confident. And because he said in 2020, John would win. Or he said, no, this is what he said. He said, John, the son of thunder, wouldn't win, but John, the beloved, would win. And I knew it was an if. I knew that just like going into the promised land in Exodus 15, for example, it shows they could have gotten there in 11 days, but he in his mercy doesn't let them go against all the giants immediately. So they're not wandering. He's strategically moving them, strengthening them, so when they go in, they're ready. Well, John, the one with the son of thunder, would have took on the giants before time, and it would have been according to what I've seen, it would have been not that we couldn't have the courage and stand up and fight, but it would have been not how he wanted to win this battle. It was through the sweet stick, which I will be speaking a lot to. Because the sweet stick basically is what happened in Exodus 15, where they come up on the bitter waters and they throw in the stick, and it turns the waters from bitter to sweet. It's the most powerful way we're going to move the hearts of a nation, sweet but substantial. And I want to speak to just the insight that God's giving about what's it look like to bring the kindness of God that leads people to repentance. I'll give you one little picture. I gave it yesterday. Is I won in this wrestling match against this individual that had just had a hard time. It was his first year. He wasn't winning much. It was my first year. And he was just demoralized. He had been somebody really known and in other sports and in boxing. And so when I got down there in the locker room, I had already won, but he wanted to box me, fight me. And I could box and wrestle and take care of myself. So I just felt for him, and I was kind. I could feel the pain in him, this wailing out, and it's screaming out, really. And it's like the people in the earth today, they're screaming out of their pain for their rights and how they've been forgotten and how they haven't been appreciated. And what there is happening is two things. One is the design of the Lord, that we were like David's, that we fought wars and battles and we took territory. Now our children are more like Solomon's, where they're by peace, they're gaining a lot of their fathers and mothers' wealth, and they're attuning more to other populaces, other tribes and nations and kindreds. But there's either they can attune according to God's voice, or they can attune according to their soul that just has a false mercy and then has this chip of judgment. And so that's what happens. A gift opens up in the next generation to where really my oldest daughter and her husband, they see better about how to manage and love people. I ran teams, ran a business, but I was tough. I mean, too tough, too driven, because I thought that's just the way you do it. And now I see them and their nurture and their care for the people that work with them. I just thought everybody that's with me, and our whole team was like this, sacrifice, and we didn't spend much time. The strong were strong. If somebody wasn't so strong, we just didn't wait up for them. And that, because we had to build something for the earth. And there is this beauty of original design about this being a Solomon or Jedediah generation, what he was named really by David, the beloved of the Lord, that's going to see the blue cities, the revelation of how to redeem and build cities. But they've been hurt towards the church because they haven't seen the church's sensitivity, and we might have to reach them a different way. And it's with the sweet stick, but it doesn't mean compromising our value system. It's again, like I was around a gay couple for a while, and I just won in my life and my lifestyle. It just won, and they were really struggling, and I didn't want to. I just wanted to give them, as they accepted it, tools that they could consider that would bring them into their kingship and their royalty and their dignity. So there is more than just going from this critical Leviathan nature that is really the issue today, the presence of a third party called Leviathan, and us going into a place where God shows us the beauty of our past, present, and future. And again, about the prophecies that we're wishing that all would prophesy. We're wishing that all would hear the voice of the Lord and that we'd hear it together, but that we'd help be mother and fathers, not to kill the gift, but to help route it and direct it. And I say about the prophecies around Trump, that again, I say there was a few reasons. One was for his own health. There was something going on in his body that people don't know about. There's other things that Lord can make any of us look dumb. He doesn't mean to, but it doesn't mean people are false. It doesn't mean people didn't hear. It means, like Isaiah, the Lord might say, okay, I still have a process that you might not take the land all at once, but that doesn't mean, okay, we go all in with politics and now we're all out. It's just this emotional IQ and stability that knows, no, we still have a call in government. It's like when I went into business, people thought I was so carnal. I had been a pastor. Well, 98% of the people have kingdom callings. And just because it was the fear and greed model in many areas didn't mean I couldn't come in with the bless and the benevolence and build model. And it spread because people that were lost, I'd have lunches with and tell them about a presence-based business and about God in the business. And they'd say, I want that. And so I'm not to be afraid of an arena where enemies have tried to come in. I'm to be wise as a serpent, gentle as a dove. And I believe the years from 2020 to 2030 are the years of original design. And it's where we see from a whole different place, according to his eyes, and we speak what he's saying about how he named a city, like Nineveh. He said, you call it this, but I call it this beautiful city, this fair city, this compassionate city. What he calls it, it becomes. And if we agree with him, it becomes. And so maybe also it was more important with this election that we agreed for the right things versus standing back and analyzing prophets and seeing if they were going to be right or wrong. Maybe it was a Horton here's a who time, and all of us get that place where the little Betsy Sue, we're all heard in our decrees together, and that we begin right now with the decrees that the Lord's going to give us to decree into our land, where we're not decreeing how evil and dark it is and magnifying the enemy, but we're decreeing the good news and the God who's greater, and about redeemed cities and radiant cities that will love him well, and pointing out to people, like I'm just going to close part 2 with this about the prophetic. And I was in after Zimbabwe, where everybody was killed, I went to Johannesburg, and I went there, had to leave Zimbabwe, fast, and ended up in Johannesburg. And in Johannesburg, I was going to this village, this house in the midst of apartheid and Soweto. It's, you couldn't go in there at night, you'd be killed. And it was just these dogs that are, hunting dogs that are scrounging, and they're louder. They sound like coyotes or hyenas. And so the setting, just dark, 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 lots of horrible things. Go into this around the corner of this little hut. It's got 150 people in it. Orange, she looks orange, filled with hope. I walk in, they sing like I've never heard anybody sing, with love. They're speaking about the future. They're speaking about that their nation's going to be a place, peace, loves God. Just things you never heard. They didn't even have a word in their language for future. And it's this woman that's about 4'10", and she's prophesying about the youth and their future and about the elderly. I wept. It just is the most brilliant hope center in the darkest area. And I find out that how it started for her was this man was beating her brother to death in front of her, torturing him, cutting with his bayonet his tongue, and worse, I won't go into it. And for about 6 hours, and she was supposed to be singing over him dying because he was from the other tribe, and this man wanted to kill the tribe. He was trying to find out where his other tribe was hiding or bedded down to fight, and he wouldn't give them their location. So at 3 a.m, after 6 hours of torturing her brother and slicing him up, he hits him because the brother would never say anything. Of course, the sister doesn't know anything. He hits him with the butt of the gun in the head, and he drops to his death. And the woman looks at him. This woman prophesies, and she looks from a far off place and looks at him with the eyes of kindness, and she says, "You will be my chief cornerstone." And he broke and wept because he had a heart in there. But could I do that? Could I see the original design? Could I see the seed in there and bring it out? Well, I've been tested of the Lord when I've wanted to give some people some rough times, and even the ones that are writing about the prophets, and we need the prophets. We need to build them up. We need to tell them, keep reaching for what the Lord's saying. Qualify it. Don't double down and say, oh, this or that. Just be humble and say, for me, it's not what I identify by. I know how important it is with those that have giftings in different areas, whether you have great giftings in pastoring or great giftings in apostolic, just to honor them and want them to have their seat in the orchestra and want them built up. And if they exceed their boundaries at points, everybody's gonna. Then Jesus knows how to take us from the front seat to the back seat, just in our hearts, and get us to rewire and ask those things. It's time for the marvelous comrades to come forth. It's time for those who are for each other and that will seek each other out and say, what did you mean by that? And so I love you. So that was part 2. Part 2 was about, don't give yourself to that which criticizes immediately. If somebody hasn't prayed over somebody, I used to say 20 hours of adoration and just affection towards somebody before I speak one. I have to love them like Jesus loved, or God loved Ephraim. And he said, Ephraim, I love you with all my heart. I got a covenant forever, but I have to say this against you. That's the place it has to come out of. And God is inviting us into this last political time. It's not going to be hard to shine like a light in the rancor that's out there. And you're the ones that do it. And I'm going to prophesy to you about how to do that. So part 2 is finished right now. I just say, I haven't, in Hawaii, Michael Brown and Anna and that bass there just is a high revelation you're going to get of the nature of people according to God's design. And it's going to be people that surprise you. Look for Sylvester Stallone. Look for Rocky. Look for a few others that will be out there, that they'll be asking the questions of life or death. And you'll look right beyond, what they've done or said. You'll see a heart. And there's a few others I could say. We'll look for some of the religious leaders that have gotten themselves into trouble with the gold, the girls, or the glory. They're going to come out and they're going to knock on the door there because they're going to say, you are the circuit riders of love, and you're sincere and authentic, and you have room for everybody. And it's going to take the movement to a whole nother place, because he's going to give you some of the most gifted reformers. But you'll love them first with no desire for anything in return. And you stayed like Barzillai across the river, across the ocean, and he's going to send them to you like David came to Barzillai when Absalom was trying to kill him, and Barzillai cared for his heart. And then when David went back, he said, I'll give you half my kingdom, come back with me. And Barzillai said, I didn't do it for that. Well, you might all say that. Cunningham's might say that, but they're to give it anyhow. And they're to be those reformers and take the whole movement to a different place. And so, Jacqueline, I hope you're on and that you mark down just what time I speak to different ones. And I just, I think I mentioned Rachel earlier. Rachel, you're not to draw back on your prophetic word, that you listen to his heart. You love to hear him. You love to just feel what he feels. And he's going to bring you uniquely his joy. And you're going to bring it to the children, the orphan kings and queens. But again, you're going to meet some that just never grew up. And they're some artists and people that they just want to hear the sweetness of his story. And then you'll say, that's a wonderful story, and then say, that's you. So there's going to be a compassion, a sweet stick that comes through you. That is a miracle of turning the bitter into sweet. I'm going to finish and go for part 3 tomorrow. I love you, and it's going to be prophecy to people. I see Blake and Jim on there. That's the 2 names I can see. I can't see Blake's last name. It has new comments over it. But Blake, Doreen needs to have her original design seen. She's got a reach and love that can cover our planet, cover our nation uniquely. And he's going to give her words of life and hope for many in the Northeast, Southeast. It's 3-4 areas of her inheritance, but that she just needs to know how in this next season. And what the Lord would do for you is to help pray with her for memorial stones. And that's what I want to leave you all tonight. Tomorrow is going to be so important, just speaking to the prophetic word of comfort for our past, present, future. Change everything out of Exodus 15. But just the memorial stones, pray for that, you all. And pray for joy. Janet's coming back, and Janet's going to be celebrating with us. There's just different ones I saw, and that they're going to move into this place of 1 Corinthians 16:7, I believe it is, where there's adversaries at the door, but on the other side, they're going to see the great effective door of ministry. They won't be lost in the challenges by the door. I don't know if Catherine was on, but I said the name Keegan because my friend Mike Haggerty's son's name was Keegan and is named Keegan, and he was being getting grief, bullied, and that's kind of what some of the people did to these prophets. They just bullied them by saying they're false and that stuff. It's just unfair stuff. No, I didn't get it. I don't know why, but it's not a person that's attacking. It's a spirit of rejection and negation, and so it will take the family decreeing how noble and royal this one is, and so that this one's not going to be treated like a doormat. And this part of what we're going to be hearing is just those words that people fear raising their hand or their words towards one like Keegan. Keegan is going to learn great compassion through this. He's not to take it personal, but at the same time, somebody's going to come and stand up for him. But he's also got to not put himself in a place for abuse. And Jim, you're going to teach people how not to put themselves in a place for abuse. You've got to just be able to say, no, that's just not. Why people put themselves into a place where they're always trying to convince the unwilling that don't like them, or, it's just, they got enough favor, and you're entering into new favor, and you're going to bring just that humor from above that sets people's hearts free. So I love you. I just hit the wall, you guys. I was going to do a third part that was really special, but just thank you. Give me some feedback on what you heard on the points. And we're trying to do a review each week that says, here in the yellow house in this corner, I spoke comfort, but it wasn't really the message from that corner of the room. I just kind of gave you an update, and if you could comment on that, and then I gave you just be merciful towards prophets, but everybody in the body of Christ, and be quick to just be kind, but I will just steer somebody pretty strongly about our log in our eye versus a speck in somebody else's eye. So that's it. Love you. Let me know if you understood what I said about the prophetic, and everybody go for it, because all of you are to be hope prophets and greater than I. Okay. Love you. Okay. Good night.